Vienna, 1896, just as the imperial waltz echoed through Hofburg's marble halls and the chandeliers burned like captured stars. The Duchess Henriette Sutherland stood at the edge of the ballroom, her gloved fingers folded around a crystal fan she had no intention of opening. Her silk gown pale amethyst with silver-threaded embroidery brushed the polished floor like mist. Around her, the court swirled, archdukes and foreign ministers, Russian grand duchesses and Hungarian counts. But she saw none of them. She had only come because the emperor himself had requested her presence. After her husband's death the previous winter, she had vanished from society. And yet, here she was again grieving, dutiful, 30 years old and already a widow, her role now more symbol than soul. She turned, just slightly, as the music shifted into a new measure. And then she saw him. He stood at the edge of the crowd, near the frescoed wall beneath the painted cherubs. Not in uniform, not among the officers or diplomats. His mask was simple black velvet, tied low to cover much of his face. His bearing was straight, too straight, and his hair too dark to be Viennese. He moved like a man trained not for court but for command. And he was watching her. Henriette lowered her gaze but only for a breath. When she looked up again, he was gone. "Henriette," came a familiar voice, Archduchess Mathilde, draped in peacock feathers. "You've been staring at shadows. Come, Count von Gellner has asked for the next dance." "I'm not dancing tonight." Mathilde frowned. "You must. Everyone's watching." Henriette forced a smile, but her heart was no longer in the room. She turned toward the arched doorway, where a servant passed with a tray of champagne. And there he was again. Closer this time. His eyes hazel, sharp, steady met hers and held. "Forgive me," he said, bowing slightly. His voice was American. "I believe I'm lost." "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "This is a royal ball." "Then it's fortunate I found the right person to ask." She hesitated. "Who are you?" He offered no name. Instead, he drew from his coat a folded note, sealed in wax with no crest. He held it out to her. She took it, her gloved fingers brushing his. A spark passed between them, swift, undeniable. "I was told to deliver this only to you," he said. She slipped the note into her fan without reading it. "Leave. Before someone sees. I'll be outside. In the garden. Don't return." But he already had. 2 hours later, Henriette stepped beyond the lantern-lit terrace and into the formal gardens. The moon hung low, pale, and watchful. She opened the note beneath a linden tree. "Your husband's death was not natural. Meet me at dawn behind the Schönbrunn stables. Come alone." It was unsigned. She should have burned it. Should have gone back inside and danced with Count von Gellner. But instead, she stood there, heart pounding, beneath the wide, empty sky. At dawn, she arrived as instructed, wrapped in a traveling cloak, her hair hidden beneath a straw bonnet. The Schönbrunn stables were quiet, save for the nickering of horses and the crunch of gravel beneath her boots. He waited near the fence, no longer masked. His face was lean, wind-burned, with a scar near his jawline that looked like it belonged to another life. "You came," he said. "Who are you?" He hesitated. "Patrick Whitlow. Former captain in the United States Army. I'm here because someone paid me to investigate your husband's death. And what I found led me to you." She crossed her arms. "You're saying he was murdered?" "I believe he uncovered corruption in the Austrian arms trade, something involving shipments to the Ottoman border. He was silenced before he could report it." "How do you know?" "Because I found his letters. Hidden in a coat pocket. They were addressed to you." Henriette's breath caught. "He never sent them. They were never meant to reach you. But I can prove what he knew. You're a foreigner. No one will believe you. Then we'll make them believe you." She stepped back. "You don't understand. If this is true, if I speak, it will bring scandal. It could destroy my family. You deserve the truth. And he deserves justice. She looked at him, truly looked. His hands were calloused, his coat worn. This was no courtier. No spy. Just a man who had taken a risk for someone he didn't know. And suddenly she understood what she had felt the night before. Not attraction. Not curiosity. Recognition. Meet me tomorrow, she said. Same place. Same hour. That night, Vienna buzzed with rumors. A masked stranger had slipped into the emperor's ball. The guards were furious. No name, no title, no explanation. Whispers snapped like dry twigs. Henriette said nothing. The next morning, Patrick waited again. This time, she brought him into the stables and led him past the stalls to a locked tack room. No one comes here, she said. You'll be safe during the day. He stepped inside, ducking beneath the low beam. You trust me now? I don't trust anyone. But I want answers. He handed her a battered leather case. Inside, letters. Dozens of them. Written in her husband's firm, slanted hand. She read the first few lines. Her knees weakened. Why didn't he tell me, she whispered. Maybe he thought it would protect you. Her eyes filled. He died alone. Patrick touched her gloved hand. Not forgotten. She didn't pull away. Over the next week, they met in secret. She brought him food, and he brought her documents, ledgers, receipts, names. Together, they traced the conspiracy back to a Hungarian general and a Prussian arms dealer. The evidence was damning. But every meeting deepened more than the case. One afternoon, as rain lashed the stable roof, she stood by the window, her gloves soaked, her bonnet forgotten. You'll have to leave soon, she said. If they catch you. I won't run. You'll hang. I've been close to death before, he said, stepping nearer. But never close to something worth living for. She turned. His coat was damp, his boots muddy. He looked nothing like the men she'd once known. And yet, her heart beat faster. He reached up and gently brushed a strand of wet hair from her cheek. She closed her eyes. I can't be seen with you, she whispered. Then we'll stay hidden. For how long? As long as it takes. She opened her eyes. You're not what I expected. Neither are you. And then, for the briefest moment, she let him touch her cheek again. This time, she didn't flinch. But the peace didn't hold. On the 8th day, a soldier arrived at the palace with a sealed warrant. There would be a duel at dawn. Count von Gellner had accused Patrick of espionage and dishonoring the Duchess's name. Henriette stood before the court chamber, pale with fury. I won't allow it, she said. But the emperor had already signed the decree. She ran to the stables, to Patrick. He was cleaning mud from his boots, calm as ever. They mean to kill you, she said. He looked up. I've fought before. This isn't a battlefield. This is a trap. He stood. Then help me win. I don't even know if you can shoot. He smiled, just faintly. I can. Her hands trembled. If you die, all of this dies with you. He stepped closer. Then give me a reason not to die. She looked up at him into those steady, storm-colored eyes and did the only thing she could. She kissed him. Not as a duchess. Not as a widow. As a woman who had been alone too long, and found something worth risking everything for. I'll be there, she whispered. At dawn. No matter what happens. And then she slipped the smallest pistol she owned, pearl-handled, barely the length of her palm, into his coat pocket. For insurance, she said. He nodded once. And as the sun began to rise, Vienna held its breath. The duel began just after sunrise, in a narrow clearing behind the riding grounds of Laenzer Tiergarten, chosen to keep the affair discreet. A fine mist clung to the grass, and a soft wind stirred the hem of Henriette's wool skirt as she stood hidden behind an old yew hedge, her breath quiet, her posture still. She had come dressed like a merchant's widow, black veil pulled low, and no one noticed her arrival. Patrick stood 10 paces from Count von Gellner, both men flanked by appointed seconds. The Count bore himself with the practiced ease of a man who had fenced at court since boyhood. Patrick's stance, though less refined, was grounded a soldier's, not a duelist's. Every line of his body showed restraint, not bravado. The pistols were loaded. The seconds nodded. "Turn," said the official. They stepped 1, 2, 3 until 10 were counted. The pause before the signal stretched like a taut cord. Then, fire. 2 shots cracked through the morning fog. Henriette's gloved hand flew to her throat. Von Gellner stumbled backward, grazing his shoulder. Patrick remained standing, his arms still extended, expression unreadable. The Count's second rushed forward. "It's superficial," he said tersely. "He'll lave." Patrick lowered his weapon. "I had no quarrel with him." Von Gellner, pale but upright, met his gaze. "Then why accept?" Patrick holstered the pistol with care. "Because sometimes honor demands you stand still while someone tries to kill you." Henriette didn't move until the crowd began to disperse. She kept her veil drawn, her steps measured. Only once Patrick passed the yew hedge did she let herself breathe. "You didn't miss," she said. "I aimed wide. You could have ended him. I would have lost something I haven't even had the chance to name." They walked without speaking, away from the grounds, toward the edge of the hunting preserve. The path narrowed, framed with bare branches. A jay called once, high and shrill. Henriette slowed only when they reached a fallen tree, and she sat, careful not to catch her skirt on the bark. "I must leave Vienna," she said at last. He didn't ask why. "They've begun watching my movements. Chambermaids report when I leave my rooms. My cousin intercepted a letter meant for the Empress's secretary. If I stay, I'll be silenced legally, or not. You're not safe." "No. And neither are you." Patrick folded his arms. "Then we go." She looked up sharply. "We? I didn't come this far to let you disappear behind a locked door. I have nowhere to go." He crouched before her, eyes level. "There's an estate outside Ljubljana. Abandoned since the war. I was stationed nearby after the siege. I know the terrain. It's wooded, remote." She hesitated. "We'd be fugitives." "No. We'd be free." She swallowed. "I can't ride side saddle for that far." "Then we'll walk." Her laugh escaped before she could stop it, thin, incredulous. "You're mad." "I'm serious." "Then you're still mad." He didn't smile. "We'll need papers. Horses. A route that avoids the main roads." She watched a leaf drift from the tree above them. "You've planned this." "Since the moment I found the letters." Her voice softened. "Tell me something you haven't said before." He sat beside her, close enough to feel the warmth of her shoulder. "When I first saw you at the ball, I thought you were a statue. Not for your beauty though you were, but because you looked carved from something that had stopped feeling." She turned toward him. "And now?" "Now, I see a woman made of iron and fire." She lowered her eyes. "You don't know me. I've seen enough to want to." She drew a breath. "You'll need my signet to access the family stables. They won't question a courier with the right seal." He nodded. "And you'll need to leave a note, something to delay suspicion." Henriette stood. "I'll leave it with my cousin. She won't believe it, but she'll show it to the court. It'll buy us 2 days, maybe 3. Patrick rose beside her. 3 days is all I need." They parted without touch or promise. But something unspoken passed between them, an understanding forged in silence. That night, Henriette returned to the palace through the servants' corridor. Her gown was waiting, pressed and hung in its usual place. Candles burned low in the sconces. A tray of untouched supper had gone cold on the sideboard. She undid her veil with steady fingers and retrieved her signet ring from its velvet case. She held it a moment beneath the lamp's glow. The crest, 2 lions above crossed keys, seemed to shimmer with old power. She pressed it into the wax of a blank envelope and slid it into her writing desk with a folded note addressed to the stablemaster. Then, with deliberate care, she wrote a final letter. Not to the emperor. Not to the court. To her husband. She folded it, sealed it, and placed it atop the others she had kept hidden in a rosewood box. Then she closed the lid, placed the key inside, and left it on her pillow. At midnight, she crossed the courtyard in riding trousers and a cloak lined with fur. A stable boy, bribed with a coin and a story, handed over the reins. Patrick waited at the edge of the woods, his horse already saddled, a satchel tied behind the saddle-horn. You came, he said quietly. I never said I wouldn't. He helped her mount. The moon was high, the stars sharp above the frost-tipped trees. As they rode, the city fell away. No titles. No walls. No courtly masks. Just a man and a woman beneath the wide, open sky heading toward something they had not named, but had already chosen. They reached the foothills before the sun had fully risen, the air crisp with the scent of pine and melting frost. Their horses moved at a steady pace, hooves muffled in the soft undergrowth. Behind them, Vienna receded into memory, its marble facades and candlelit corridors replaced by moss-covered stones and the occasional cry of a distant hawk. Henriette's face was drawn with fatigue, but her eyes remained alert. The wide-brimmed hat she wore shielded her from recognition, though there was no one here to recognize her. She rode with practiced ease, her back straight, her gloved fingers steady on the reins. Patrick glanced her way once, noting the way her jaw tensed when they came upon the remnants of a burnt-out cabin, hardly more than a blackened frame now overtaken by bramble. They cleared this land after the uprising, he said. Some families never returned. How far are we from Ljubljana? 2 days, if the weather holds. Her gaze lingered on a cluster of birch trees bending toward one another like whispering women. And if it doesn't? Then we find shelter before the roads flood. There's a village north of the pass. I know someone there. Henriette didn't ask who. Instead, she adjusted the strap of the satchel slung across her shoulder, where the most damning of the documents were hidden. How well do you know the terrain? Well enough to avoid soldiers. And your contact? She was a nurse. During the siege. He paused, then added, we were stationed in the same camp. She helped me survive a fever that would have ended me. Henriette didn't respond immediately. When she did, her voice was quiet. Do you still care for her? I owe her my life. But no. They rode in silence after that, until the woods thickened and the terrain grew uneven. Dismounting, they led the horses up a narrow ridge, where the wind cut sharper and the light thinned beneath the canopy. By late afternoon, they found the remnants of a stone chapel, its roof long gone, but its walls intact enough to shelter them from the cold. Patrick tethered the horses beneath an overhang, then joined Henriette inside. She'd already lit a small fire with dry pine needles and a scrap of linen torn from her underskirt. Her hands, though reddened by the chill, moved with purpose. You've done this before, he said. My father used to take me hunting in the Tyrolean Alps. Before I was married. He thought it would make me less delicate. She offered him a dry smile. It worked. Patrick unrolled a blanket and sat across from her, the fire casting flickering shadows across the stone floor. I never knew my father. She stirred the embers with a twig. What happened to him? Drowned in the Mississippi. My mother said he was trying to ferry someone's livestock during a flood. He never came back. They fell quiet again, the fire snapping softly between them. Outside, wind swept through the pine boughs, carrying the faint scent of snow. Henriette pulled her knees under her skirt, wrapping her cloak tighter. "You said you found my husband's letters in his coat." "I did." "Were any of them personal?" Patrick hesitated, then reached into his satchel. From a leather pouch, he withdrew a single folded page, creased along the edges. "I kept one back," he said. "I thought you might want to read it alone." She took it without a word, her fingers trembling slightly as she unfolded the paper. The firelight caught the ink, faded but still legible. She scanned the lines in silence, brows knit, her lips barely moving as she read. When she finished, she didn't cry. Instead, she folded the letter and placed it inside her sleeve. "He wrote about you," Patrick said. Henriette looked up. "He said you had a mind sharper than any man in court. That you saw through lies before they could be spoken. And that he feared you would never forgive him for what he'd discovered." She stared into the fire. He was right. Patrick leaned back against the wall, stretching his legs out in front of him. "He also said he trusted you to finish what he couldn't." Her voice was low. "That's not trust. That's penance." He didn't argue. When they broke camp the next morning, snow had begun to fall lightly, dusting the forest in white. They moved quickly, skipping breakfast, the cold biting into their cheeks. By midday, they reached the edge of a ravine and crossed a timber bridge slick with frost. On the other side, nestled between the hills, lay a cluster of stone cottages and a chapel bell tower, its cross tilting slightly with age. Patrick dismounted first, leading his horse by the reins. "We'll stop here. Her cottage is the one with the green shutters." Henriette followed him toward the house. A curl of smoke rose from the chimney, and a black and white cat sat curled on the windowsill, eyes half closed. The door opened before they knocked. A woman in her 40s, dark-haired and plainly dressed, stood framed in the threshold. She had the air of someone who had seen war and refused to let it harden her. "Patrick Whitlow," she said. "I told myself I'd never see your reckless face again." "You always did curse poorly," he said. She stepped aside. "Come in before you both freeze." Inside, the cottage was warm and smelled faintly of garlic and damp wool. Henriette removed her cloak, folding it neatly. The woman looked her over once, then turned to Patrick. "You bring nobility to my doorstep now?" "She's not here to be noble." Henriette met her gaze evenly. "I'm here to survive." The woman nodded. "Then I'll help you do that." They ate stew in silence, and when the meal was done, the woman showed them to the loft. Henriette sat on the edge of the narrow bed, her boots resting on a woven mat. Patrick leaned against the beam, arms crossed. "She didn't ask for details," Henriette said. "She doesn't need them." "I'm not used to that." He stepped closer. "You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. I've spent half my life doing just that." He reached out and gently touched her wrist. "You don't have to anymore." She looked at his hand, then at his face. "What happens when the court comes looking?" "We'll be gone before they do." "And after?" "After, we stop running." His hand slid from her wrist to her fingers. "I don't want to disappear," she said. "Then we make a life where you're seen." She closed her eyes, just for a moment. When she opened them again, the fear was still there, but it was quieter now, shadowed by something steadier. "I'll hold you to that," she said. And when he bent to kiss her, there was no urgency, no desperation, only the quiet clarity of two people who had chosen each other, not despite the fire, but because of it. The snow deepened through the second night in the village, blanketing the hills in silence. In the loft above the nurse's cottage, Henriette lay awake, her eyes tracing the rafters. The low ceiling pressed close, and the faint creak of timber in the wind reminded her of the palace's groaning staircases during winter when the guests were gone and the corridors echoed with absence. Patrick stirred beside her, shifting to his side, half asleep. His breathing had steadied after days of travel, but a faint edge remained in his voice when he spoke. Did you ever think you'd leave Vienna like this? I imagined it once, she said. But not with anyone beside me. He pushed himself onto an elbow, blinking against the dim light. What stopped you? I thought I owed the city everything. She looked toward the tiny window, where the moonlight caught the curve of the frost. Now I think it only ever took. Downstairs, the fire had gone out. The nurse, whose name Henriette now knew as Ilonka, had left water and bread near the hearth before turning in. She asked no questions, and Henriette had offered no answers. The arrangement suited them both. Patrick sat up, pulling on his shirt. We should leave before the storm breaks again. The longer we stay, the more likely someone recognizes you. Henriette nodded, swinging her legs over the side of the bed. I had a dream last night, a vineyard, somewhere in the south. The leaves were red. I used to go there with my aunt before she died. She'd make me pick grapes until my hands stained. Was it near Trieste? Further inland. Istria, maybe. He stood, fastening the buttons at his cuffs. We could go there. She looked at him. And do what? Grow grapes? Pretend we aren't who we are? No. We build something new. Not to erase what came before but to outgrow it. She didn't answer, but she didn't turn away either. They left the village before dawn, taking a trail Ilonka had described that would skirt the main roads. The snow was lighter now, but the sky warned of more. Henriette rode in silence, her posture tense as they passed an abandoned garrison. A rusted cannon lay half buried beside the road, its barrel split from age and neglect. Patrick slowed his horse. You've seen a battlefield before. Henriette kept her eyes ahead. They brought the wounded to Schönbrunn during the Hungarian rebellion. One of the surgeons collapsed during a triage and I stepped in. No one else knew how to suture a chest wound. You never told me that. You never asked. They crested a ridge by midday. From there, the land opened into a sloping valley, scattered with bare orchards and stone walls half swallowed by snow. Smoke rose from a distant farmstead. Patrick dismounted, scanning the horizon. There's a border checkpoint about 15 miles south. If we reach it by dusk, we can cross into Carniola under the guise of merchant travel. I traded for 2 permits in Prague 2 years ago, they're still valid. Henriette dismounted slowly, rubbing her gloved hands together. And if they ask why a duchess is leaving the empire with an American mercenary? They won't. You'll be my wife. She blinked, once. That's bold. It's believable. I'm not sure which of those is worse. He stepped closer. It's safer that way. They won't question us if we look like we belong together. Henriette studied him, the set of his shoulders, the dust on his coat, the quiet steadiness in his voice. And do we? His gaze didn't waver. I think we always did. She exhaled slowly. Then let's make it convincing. He reached into his coat and withdrew a ring plain gold, no crest. Ilonka gave it to me. It belonged to her brother. She said he would have preferred it be used for something real. Henriette held out her hand. He slipped it on without ceremony. The metal was still warm from his pocket. When their fingers brushed, she felt nothing of the court, nothing of the marble and mirrors. Only the truth of this moment, 2 people choosing each other, not for titles, not for duty but because they could. We'll reach the checkpoint by nightfall, Patrick said. And after that? There's a town called Vienna. I have a contact who can forge a new identity. From there, we go wherever the road takes us. She looked down at her gloved hand, at the gold now catching the wintry light. Then let's begin.